this project started. Sadly, I don't have that. That's sad for all of us. So I think the goal for today is to hear some ideas and suggestions as to ways that we can move this along, and then hear from you all about your thoughts on this project. I do want to note we have some folks here in attendance. Robert Lund is the Deputy General Manager of SEPTA. Robert? Francis Kelly, who's the Assistant General Manager of SEPTA. There's Francis. All right. Joe Connolly with SEPTA Government Affairs. Joe? Hi, Joe. We have Skip Bryan, who's on the board at SEPTA. Hey, Skip. We have Josh Maxwell from Chester County Board of Commissioners. And we have Ethan Schaefer from Carolyn Committa's office. Ethan? Oh, hi, Ethan. We have Timothy Phelps, who's the Executive Director of the Transportation Management Association of Chester County. Timothy? How you doing, Timothy? And Joe Giacchino, who's the President of the Four States Railway Services. Hey, Joe. I know your brother, Larry. I'm well. How are you? So with that being said, yes. Okay, Kevin. Hi, Kevin. How are you? Nice to meet you. Well, thank you all for coming today, and not just those that I've named. Thank you, everyone else, for being here. Obviously, you all are interested in what's going to happen with our railroad. I know that SEPTA has some things that they wanted to talk about. Am I right about that? A presentation? I'm going to kick it over to you then, Mr. Lund.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming out and listening to us. We have our board members here from Chester County, Kevin and Skip, as well as senior members from SEPTA. That shows the importance of rail service and Westchester, to our system and our network. And I'm going to start just a little background and history and what is the Westchester branch, which runs out to the Borough of Westchester. Yes. Okay, just quick history. The original service to Westchester came actually from Fraser, 1830s. Service from Media, 1858, and that's the line we're talking about here. SEPTA, for various business and other reasons, conditions, suspended service in 1986. Right now, we are working on restoring service to US Route 1, Middletown Township by Wawa. That is scheduled for about this time next year to go into revenue service. PennDOT, and this is why we're here tonight, did a feasibility study that they completed in 2018, what it would take to restore service, regional rail service into the borough. Here, just a little background, what we're talking about. It's 9 miles. It's 9 miles of single track railroad from Route 1 into the borough, consisting of 25 bridges, some dating into the 1850s, 7 public and 5 private at-grade crossings. To restore service, those bridges would have to be rehabbed. The tracks will have to be, for the most part, rebuilt. We need an all-new electrified system, new catenary structures, and wire. We're anticipating at least 1 traction power substation new, an all-new signal system. What's out there now is great for the Westchester Railroad and what they're operating, but for us to run the higher speed revenue service, all that has to be upgraded. and all new stormwater facilities. As you know, in the borough, once you touch it, you have to bring it up and address all the stormwater issues that you don't necessarily have to deal with right now. The report from PennDOT, the study, suggested 4 stations to be rebuilt. To rebuild the stations, you're talking full high-level platforms, approximately 4 feet above top of rail. They have to be long enough to allow level boarding from every car, so approximately anticipate 6-car trains. That's 528 feet long platform, fully ADA accessible with ramps and everything. If you go down Route 1, you can see what the effort is right there. The stations they suggested: Cheney, Westtown, Westchester University, and Westchester, the borough. Single track railroad is not the most efficient. It has slow service. So part of the study is, do you go with the single track as it is now or a double track? That just greatly increases the price. Instead of rehabbing bridges, I'm replacing all the bridges. May need an additional substation. There's more impact to overall construction, and the cost, probably 70% increase in cost. Just to give you as a comparison to SEPTA's existing lines, for single track service out to Westchester, including out to Wawa, that's 12 miles of single track railroad versus the longest we have right now is on the Doylestown line from Lansdale to Doylestown. Now, how do you fund this? And I know the PennDOT study had some cost figures in there. I can tell you, based on the costs we're incurring and the conditions we found between Elwyn and Wawa, our estimate that what PennDOT's consultant projected is on the low side. Give you order of magnitude, it's probably about between 175 and 200 million for the 3+ miles of track and 1 station to take it to Wawa. We're now talking 9 miles of track and 4 stations. You're talking 500 to 600 million dollars as ballpark estimate right now, without doing any detail analysis. But just compared to we know the conditions, the soils, the embankments we've run into and had to rebuild going down by Wawa. Just real-time information, engineering information. So how do you fund that? Typically, you go through the FTA and you go through their competitive grant. This isn't something at this size of a project where you can go with the old Tiger or Build grants. They're now called the RAISE grants. They're for a much lower dollar project. So you're going into the capital investment grant, the SIG program. There's 3 categories. This would fall under the new starts. It's a very competitive, it's a rating system. You have to go and, I won't go through all of it, but you have a lot of categories of justification, ridership. It's black and white. It's how you score on those ratings will tell you whether you're even competitive the next step to be able to get funding. And there is a good portion of that valuation is what is the local funding opportunity? How much is the local municipalities, the counties, the state are going to fork up as a portion of this project? What I brought to me, tonight, and I'll try not to bore you too much, but we fly drones over this line. We do inspections of this line on a regular basis. Can put together a series of drone flights into a video that were taken between April and May of this year. Just to give you, it goes a little fast because I didn't want to be here all night, but it'll give you an idea of what the line looks like, what are the conditions. You have the creek running through it, you have developments building, just to give everybody an idea. Sorry, I forgot. You look at SEPTA as a network, and how can we improve the network of transportation, public transportation out in the Westchester area? Right now, we're proposing in our capital program that goes to the board this month, a multimodal connection bus loop at the Exton train station. It's something we've been talking about. We hope to be able to progress that. Right now, service routes, bus routes in around the borough. You have Route 92 goes out to Exton Mall, goes to Malvern. You have the 104 down on Westchester Pike out to 69th Street Terminal. Kraft has operated through Route A. SEPTA's in negotiations right now to take over that route out to Coatesville. We're hoping to have the negotiations settled and be operating that in August. And that would then be called the Route 135. That's in progress, but we're working on that. We've been approached, and Skip, Brian, there's a group that was looking to provide a electric bus connector loop in the borough. And we met with them, talked to them once. That's something we're here to talk. Our general manager's a planner. I think we should come out and talk, bring the planners out, our bus surface planners. Let's go talk and see is that an opportunity for the borough to provide better connectivity, whether it's through the borough or out to key areas around the borough. What other routes may be an opportunity? We are undergoing right now our bus revolution, as they call it, the comprehensive bus network redesign. As part of that, we are looking at all our routes. How can we provide bus routes that better serve and have faster, more reliable service to all the communities? These are all things that we have to look at and may be a better or quicker option if you need connections into regional rail. And right now, a single track operation from Westchester into 30th Street or Jefferson Station, we're projecting at about 75 minutes on the train. Whereas get to Exton and have a shorter ride. It may be a two-seat ride, but it may be shorter and it's more reliable. We're working with Amtrak and PennDOT on what kind of improvements along the Harrisburg line with interlockings and infrastructure improvements that will help in the future improve the level of service to Exton. Also those who can drive or willing to drive, driving to Malvern and get back to ridership, the half-hour service, is that a opportunity for you? Part of what we're looking at, the price tag for service to Westchester is high, and we all know that. SEPTA has a $4.6 billion backlog in state of good repair. That's infrastructure, that is vehicles to bring it up into a state of good repair. That has to be priority to maintain the service that we have. We have some of the best service in the country. If you take a look at the amount of service we have and the types of service, other cities are spending billions upon billions to get a fraction of what we have. So let's look at how do we build upon what we have while still planning sometime in the future. Maybe we can do something with rail service right back to Westchester. But I'm not here to give any false promises. I just want to provide the facts, provide information, and we have ongoing dialogue. Any questions? What we're looking to do is, right now, to get a bus into the Exton station is very difficult, and how do we turn them around? We were looking at, probably at the PennDOT parking lot, right on the ramp there, whether we could build a loop there to be able to bring buses in, drop them off in close proximity to the station and leave. The other part of this is PennDOT is in negotiations with Norfolk Southern to purchase that right away. Part of what we're talking, while the county's interested in taking the right away for a trail, what we've had discussions with PennDOT, a portion of that at Exton could be allowed to get better connectivity between the parking lot against the tracks versus the PennDOT parking lot, and still provide a connection for the rail trail facility in there. Yeah, right now that's scheduled. We're shooting the same time we return revenue service to the Route 1. We'll have that track up to the creek there at Glen Mills back in service. Well, why don't we meet and we can talk? I think we have to discuss anyway with a year from now, putting that line fully back in service. As you know, the rails are physically cut this side of Route 1. Once that's reconnected, all the FRA inspections and everything come back online. So we'll have to discuss. But look, that is, I don't have the exact number, but it gets weighed against the cost, essentially the cost per mile to the project, the overall cost of the project. And frankly, the FTA's book on it's about this thick. But if anybody wants to sit down, I can, I'm willing to meet, bring in the key people who do the grants and that type of work at SEPTA and discuss, so everybody knows what the facts are. That's what this is about, getting the facts out there, so we all make decisions with information. Limited parking, yeah. I don't believe it included like a large structured parking, but there would be some parking at the station. Frankly, the PennDOT study did not get into that degree of detail. And if this project progresses, or when this, in the future this progresses, that all has to be part of the detail evaluation. It has to be part of the environmental impact reviews that the federal government requires on a project like this? And that's part of why we look at SEPTA as a network. If you could take if you're in the borough and you can take a connector bus or shuttle that's reliable and at a high frequency to bring you to the train station, that's part of what we have to look at. In Chester County, at examples, Paoli, a lot of the businesses run, and I'm here, shuttles back and forth between the business parks, the office parks, to and from the station, because actually, frankly, there's a huge reverse commute where you have people coming from the city out to work in the suburbs pre-pandemic. But, you know, that's all part of what has to be looked at and why we want to look at SEPTA as a network and not an individual line. I have to think positive, but you're right. There is, you know, right now our regional rail ridership is still at less than 20% of the pre-pandemic level. You know, is it picking up? Yes, it's picking up slowly. What that future is, I don't know. We've had all kinds of projections. We brought in people who specialize this to make projections. I wish I could say 3 years from now, it's going to be back to where it was. But frankly, we look at Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays are much higher levels of ridership than Mondays and Fridays. We saw that starting before the pandemic. How that pans out as we move forward, I don't know. But it's something we are watching, those riderships, where people are coming from every day, and making service adjustments to plans to make service adjustments accordingly. It is, you know, this is the future of SEPTA, and we're hoping everybody comes back, but we're planning for they may not be back as many as they had before. That's why we do studies, that's why we evaluate, that's why the federal government, in evaluating whether a project makes sense to fund, all that goes into that, as well as what is the community support or lack of support for a project, and it's for the whole length of the line, so it's part of the discussion.
It's always become part of the. That's the nitty.
That's why we're here today. Here.
Ladies and gentlemen, SEPTA has been very kind to come here this evening. I think what I'd like to see is they're here to present the facts, and what I would like to see is for people to ask questions and not make speeches. Let's take advantage of their expertise. It's like I said, it's very kind of them to come out here. So please ask questions.
Right now, you have a committee that is studying it, trying to gather the facts, the figures, does it make sense? That's part of the influence. Right now, it's a planning phase, it's an evaluation phase. That's what you do. Fortunately, these things are not something that happens right away. It takes time. And frankly, I operate and build. I'm not a planner by background, but we're more than welcome. Have you come and sit down with our planners and our grant people if you want to get some more facts. And I think you're working through the county, the borough. That's where it's important, right? I have not been involved in any discussions like that, but that's something I can bring back to service planning folks. Tim, have you heard anything about that?
Not from.
Could be You know, SEPTA may or may not be the best operator for something like that, but it's part of the regional transportation network that should be discussed.
Joanne, go ahead.
The borough, I came here on your behalf, so I'm more than willing to sit down. No, that has not been evaluated. It's probably 18 months to 2 years if you have to go through a full study, and significant funding's involved due to the degree of, if you wanted real numbers out there, we could probably, and I get you some more information to give you a rough idea how it fits in, but you'd need to have much, as we talked about, ridership projections, cost projections, and then we can come up with a rough idea, but to get a really firm number, you know, hone in a little bit tighter, it's going to take a while. And it is expensive to do all the research.
Right, from the quarry to the borough. And this is what I heard, but that doesn't mean that's what it was. There's so much of a backlog in work to get from the quarry to the borough. It seems to me it's not a real priority. Is that also a fair assumption?
It is not in SEPTA's capital program now to do any significant work along that line to be able to restore our revenue service.
And the last question is, Joanne Kelton brought up the economic impact study. By the borough funding an economic study, how will that move the project along with the federal government and with SEPTA? Last question to follow up. I see this on television a lot in the White House. They always follow up questions. I just heard you say a 12-year backlog or 12-year study or capital expenditures. In my mind, I just heard that you're not going to talk to us really for 12 years.
Thank you. So you have to push that button on the microphone while you're talking. Before we continue, I'm going to have to ask people, if you come up to the lectern, you have to push that button on the microphone. It's broken. Oh, jeez. Okay, all right. Well, then if you could raise, hands have been getting tired of doing this. Thank you very much. Who was going to go next? Joanne? Okay, thank you. Uh, Anyone else from SEPTA? I didn't have the name. I saw a list of the people that were here, but I don't have it. Anyone else from SEPTA want to speak? Okay, yeah. Okay.
The local folks here, the county folks, the federal government helping us, so. But I'm here to, support and figure out what we can do and trying to keep those lines of communications open.
Hello, hello. There it is. Sorry. So I think what I heard was, I didn't hear anything about the potential for federal infrastructure dollars. I know it's a real potential, right? We have no idea whether anything's going to come through or not. But wanted to know, what your thoughts are. Have you seen this sort of proposal before? And, if so, have you seen how these sorts of funds are allocated and how a municipality like ours or a line like ours might be able to kind of get in line for that type of massive funding is one. Number two, I think what I heard is, as far as what we can do as a municipality is just to keep garnering support, building stakeholder support, gathering information like the economic impact study. Is that correct? And what else would you add to that, if so? Or what really can we do as a community to keep pushing the ball forward?
Answer, I would say that's a piece of it. You just want it more. It has to be an attractive project because it's in a competition for projects across the country, and it's not easy to get a new starts grant. So it's not just well, they really, really, really seem to want it. It's bigger than that, right? It has to be competitive in all aspects of the project.
Yeah, as Fran said, that's competitive on a national basis. You might be competing against Seattle or other West Coast cities, elsewhere on the East Coast.
We hear numbers like $80 billion for rail service thrown around. I mean, what is that impact? I mean, how far downstream does that kind of money go?
Not as far as you would like it to go. Yeah, when you think about they're providing funding for Amtrak and the national network, they're providing funding for all the various commuter rail lines across the country. All of a sudden, what sounds like a huge amount of money starts getting split up into smaller and smaller pieces.
Explain to me. And for people that are not that familiar with it, the money is, a pool of money is set aside for the new starts. So it's not all, whatever the number is, it's not 80 billion, 75 billion, all in new starts. There's a specific amount of money that they set aside, and then everybody has to compete for it. And I'm not discouraging people. We want to try and compete. That's what we try and do. We have phenomenal people. We have phenomenal partners. We engage the local governments. We want to compete. We're just, like Bob said, we're just trying to keep it real.
Yeah, absolutely. We appreciate that. Is there some informal mechanism? It sounded like 18 to 24 months in order to go through the whole process to put in a grant application through the New Starts program. Is there some sort of more informal kind of checklist, or what's a mechanism that we can start to see where we're good, where we're not good, and where to focus our efforts?
Why don't I suggest, we have a working level meeting. I can bring some of, the people who, work in that field, and we can start going through just some of the type of items they look at and review as part of application. So at least you have an idea of what goes into the application, what the federal government looks for, what rates high, what doesn't rate high.
That'd be perfect. Thank you. And the only other question was, what can we keep doing as a municipality? We know it's not on the not currently on your 12-year list. You revisit every year, 12 years out. How do we, eventually get on there? From what we can do as a municipality above and beyond the meeting we'll have with the planning process.
What you're doing today and the meetings and discussions we'll have in the future, that's how you do it. That's his job.
Like I said earlier, you have very engaged board members. You have some of the best elected officials being champions for public transportation. So, I mean, that's really, it's the conversation and respectful engagement. That's what it's all about.
Awesome. And information like the economic impact study that the county was so kind on giving us a grant for, Josh. That sort of information is helpful as well.
Yeah, engaging all the stakeholders, county level, you have other municipalities where this would be running through, have that open and honest dialogue on what's required.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Bryson, they stir questions as they quietly answer questions. I love it. Most of the line, 7 miles, if we're going to put a double track in, we got 14 miles, roughly about $35 million a mile. But most of it's in Delaware County. How do we get them engaged into Chester County, Commissioner? But how do we do that? Because if they're not willing, to get on the other side of that seesaw, we're like wasting our time here, because we want to see rail service here. So they say most of it's in Delaware County, the mayor of Easttown, you know what I'm saying? So.
Bernie, FYI, the Delaware County Planning Commission gave us a letter of support recently. So they are starting to get engaged slowly.
A couple questions. Just for people that I'm going to take a slight detour. For people that haven't read it, the feasibility study that was done in 2018, which is on the website. If you're not familiar with it, I would strongly suggest reading it. It's very detailed, but fascinating at the same time. You'll learn a lot from it. And I'm surprised that I actually remember some of the numbers, which gets me to my first question. Although it was a long time ago, when rail service ended, they said the ridership per day was in the neighborhood of 106 to 109 people. And in the feasibility study from 2018, the anticipated ridership was felt, single seat was a little over 1,900. And it was felt that 1,400 of that would probably be first-time users. And I'm wondering, how do you figure something like that out? And would that still be relevant today? I mean, given COVID, so many people are working from home. It's like the whole metric has changed. So, and then finally, uh, it 12-year cycle, I understand that, and that it's a low priority. But hypothetical question, if I gave you a check, which I have one in my wallet, for $400 million, what would you spend it on? This or something else?
Oh, answer honestly, Bob.
I have a $4.6 billion backlog in infrastructure that I'm projecting right now at the funding levels we get. I might be able to hold steady over 20 years. So my first priority is being able to safely run the service we have today. Now, if someone comes up with a separate pot of money I can't use on that, let's talk.
Um, Okay, so if I gave you that check, it would probably go someplace else. The final thing, no, I'm not going to say that because I don't have a fact to back it up. But thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Mr. Maxwell? Sure. Thank you.
Hold the button for you. Not to break this one.
I guess the reason I wanted to stop in, one, hired by the Discretionary residents to advocate for transportation sets, and this is our county seat. Extraordinarily, I'll do it. You're working really hard, Scott. To Chester County, but I just have a couple of questions, and I feel awkward asking you in a public setting because I'd probably give you a call tomorrow and you'd be happy enough to answer it. In terms of long-term planning for SEPTA, how does population growth factor into those decision-making, being that for a few years now, Chester County's been the fastest growing county in Southeast PA, projected to grow at even a faster pace. According to the most recent DVRPC study, more than 50,000 residents moving in. We could pass some of our neighboring counties who are smaller in size and population by then, by 2050. And we have one regional rail line right now for 525,000 people. So does that factor in, maybe we don't get a train station tomorrow, but this zip code grows by what, if you sell your house for what you're going to be able to sell it for, how does that factor into that decision?
It is one of the factors that get involved is, population growth, projections of growth, what is the overall availability of a transportation network, not just transit, but we also have to look at the road side of it, equity. There's a lot of factors that all play into how we provide and where we provide service. And actually in the bus revolution, as they're calling it, that's a key element of being involved. And the same will go with regional rail and the levels of service. But it's not on the regional rail. It's a little bit different in as much as we're also constrained about around the capacity of the lines. And where we're talking the Harrisburg line, Paoli-Thorndale line, the restrictions we have to deal with the owner of that Amtrak.
Yes. Second question, I believe my last question, Mr. Vice President. I live a block away from a SEPTA and Amtrak stop, use the train all the time. get a text at 11 a.m., the Phillies game by 1 o'clock. It's a joy to be able to travel in and out of the city. When you make these decisions, or when these decisions are made with possibly you in the room, how much do we factor in the return on investment? And what I mean by that is, of course, having people from Philadelphia have access to Westchester University or downtown Westchester is be important, but I imagine it's just as important for Center City Philadelphia to have the buying power of Chester County coming in and having easy access to a Center City restaurant, the Kimmel Center, a Phillies game, things like that. Does that factor into the decision at all?
It's a regional issue. We have to look at the region and what's best for the region, the counties as well as the city. And I understand that since I am a Chester County resident that can walk to my train station. Yes, I understand what you're talking
Do you
about.
live in Downingtown? Do you live near me?
No, I live, Dalesford.
Oh, Dalesburg. All right. Well, we really appreciate your time. And I know that the county's committed to this project. We helped fund the study for the e-consult to talk about the economic viability of this. And we certainly realize the county with 500,000 people in it needs more transportation assets, especially over the next few years. So appreciate you guys stopping in.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions?
I'm the what next guy. All right, you mentioned getting together with the mayor and with our committee. Who would be in charge of setting up that round table so we can start looking at priorities on how we would fall on the priority list?
You can reach out to Fran here. He knows how to track me down.
Love to have your business card.
Anybody that needs a business card, but my staff organizes these kinds of meetings. We'll bring people together. We'll bring the right people from SEPTA staff, and we'll keep our board members informed. I'm staying at Skip's house because I live in the bottom of Bucks County, so it's either that or I got a long way home tonight, so I'm going to stay at Skip's house, I think.
I told him that.
Thank you. Joanna? We're not going to do that tonight. The purpose of this was to hear from SEPTA, what their plans are, what their thoughts are. We did that. I think we have a much better understanding of a potential time frame, if at all. And I just, right at this moment, we don't need this. The timing is completely off. The other thing, while I'm at it, considering the time frame that's been presented, considering the monetary considerations that were a lot more than I thought they would be, I guess a question I would have would be, I mean, doing feasibility studies, I know, yes, they need to be done for any project, but is that something that we do today? Is that going to benefit us 6 years down the road? You have to spend borough money, county money on something that, yes, it'll give us information, but is it information that's going to change your mind? I don't know.
And frankly, right now with the ridership levels we have and the projections on how slow it may be to return to a level that we would like, it's very difficult, to really make a prediction on that. It's, frankly, it's very difficult times for all of us.
Fair enough.
sometimes connector routes on rail, on Classic in Princeton, center of Princeton into back facility. Kinky, or the dinky. Princeton probably is kinky knowing Princeton, but it's the dinky, and there's one in Connecticut, for example. So my question to you, if it were feasible, let's say, for a much lower cost than $500 million, to restore the line to a level where you could run dinky, that is, diesel powered, from Westchester down to Wawa, refer to it as Wawa, but go back and forth from Westchester to Wawa, Dinky, a powered line, a single track. Wouldn't that provide useful information in terms of ridership? And I have this theory, because Westchester as I am, Skip is very familiar with the ancient history, as am I, about Chester County. I was out here in 1986 when the line, been in Westchester, a resident of Westchester since 2000. I can tell you what has transformed in Westchester. Back to 1986 or 1975, Westchester University has doubled population, and interior suddenly started burgeoning with I believe we're going to have a new hotel, lots of restaurants, we have a lot of big investment. There is going to be an Amazon facility, the old Wyeth site. There are lots of draws here. We have substantial real estate investments. There's probably going to be a but my theory is that we have a transit-oriented that goes through the southern part of the town. Now, that kind of catalyst, a rail line that was just temporary in nature, perhaps, but which actually provided its ridership, wouldn't that provide useful information? SEPTA in terms of projection. Question.
You know, that is definitely something that can be studied. Frankly, a two-seat rail line where they wait is not necessarily something that people gravitate to. Whereas if you can have a timed bus or other type of shuttle that runs at a higher frequency to whether it's Exton or to Middletown or Wawa, as we used to call it, you know, that's probably people tend to gravitate to that more than a two-seat rail line.
But it would make a difference if people could walk to the two. For example, I would welcome the opportunity to walk to a two my house, because I could do that easily. And I imagine there are a great number of other residents within the borough of Westchester just take their wheelies, walk to the two-seat line. I could get to the Philadelphia airport and anywhere in the world without using a car or without Uber or getting involved in traffic. Isn't that a pretty good incentive to having some sort of two-seat temporary service, just so you could learn what the interest is, that kind of line?
It's definitely something that can be studied.
I'd like to see the film that we have, which is a very short film, while you're here.
No.
I defer to the borough.
Understood.
If at some time outside of this meeting, you want to meet with SEPTA and show that, that's something that can be arranged.
Thank you. What? Because that's not why we're here. We were here to hear from SEPTA. We've done that. And that was the purpose of this meeting. Eric, you had a question? No, it's not why we're here.
It's exactly why we're here. The agenda item is discuss the restoration of rail service to Westchester.
We've done that.
You've done that with SEPTA, but not the restoration of rail service committee.
That wasn't the
With SEPTA
purpose of
in the
that.
room.
That's not the purpose of this meeting.
Again, the purpose of the meeting is to discuss the restoration of rail service to Westchester.
I'd like to make a motion that we close down the meeting from SEPTA and the Borough of Westchester.
This isn't a formal meeting.
Engage.
Okay. Unless there's any other business. Stand up, Lillian, so I can hear you. That would be up to borough management. Okay, with that, we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone. And thank you very much for all the information you provided. It's been
Thank you
really
for the
helpful.
opportunity to come out here.
Thank you.